Welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Translation Studies and Training, SOTST. Master of Arts, Translation Studies, Maths, English. First year. MTTO 11 Translation, History and Tradition. Block 1 Asian Tradition of Translation, Meaning and Scope. Unit 4 The Buddhist Tradition of Translation. 4.0 Objectives. This unit deals with the Buddhist tradition of translation. Reading this unit will give learners of MA in Translation Studies an opportunity to get an overview of the wide tradition of translation of Buddhist literature. After going through this unit, you will be able to understand that how the Buddhist tradition of translation began, what has been the role of translation in the propagation of Buddha's words. 4.1 Introduction. Connecting with translation studies or translation science actually means connecting with the ancient tradition of India, which has made our ancestors proud. It is very difficult to set the timeline of translation tradition in India or India's neighboring Asian countries, but scholars believe that probably the oldest example of translation is found in the Sanhitas of Vedas. It is known that the Sanhitas of the Vedas, especially the hymns of the Rigveda, are the oldest in world literature. There are some examples of translation, when the hymns of the Rigveda were presented in the form of songs in the Samaveda and the same were presented in the Yajurveda as rules for the performance of sacrifices. Based on this example, we can say that India's translation tradition is probably the oldest tradition in the whole world. 4.2 The beginning of the Buddhist tradition of translation. In the ancient history of India, the tradition of translation probably first started with the Buddhists. The nature of Gautam Buddha's teachings was such that without translation it was not possible to propagate it. There was no restriction of any clan, caste, region, caste, race, gender etc. In the education of Buddhism, there was open exemption for all. This is the reason why his teachings spread unhindered. There is an incident in Vinaya Pitaka's Chulavaga, in which the story of two Pathan brothers of Yamal and Tekul dynasty is given. They both came to Magadha from Purushpur, which is today identified with Peshawar, which is located in Pakistan, and entered the association of Gautam Buddha, became his disciple. While living in the Sangha, he saw that monks of different origins and clans recited and repeated the sublime speech of Gautam Buddha. After translating it into the language of the common man, those Pathan brothers, did not like this thing. They went to Gautam Buddha and requested him to allow him to translate Gautam Buddha's words into Chandas, the language or dialect of the Vedas. Gautam Buddha called his other disciples and scolded those two Pathan brothers and forbade them to translate into Chandas in front of them. Finally, Buddha allowed the monks to repeat, recite, and memorize his words in their own language or dialect. This incident is from the time when probably there was very little tradition of writing and most of the communication used to be oral. This incident proves that even in the 6th-5th centuries BC, people must have been facing these problems as to how to translate, from which language to which language, which they solved in their own way. There are more such examples in the words of Gautam Buddha collected in Tripitaka that the monks who went from one place to another had a special need to propagate the words of Gautam Buddha from place to place. In those situations, he resorted to translation. Significantly, in that era the means of communication were not like today. It used to take months to reach from one place to another. The example is of Bhadanta Mahakachayan, who came from ancient Avanti Desh, today's Malwa region of Madhya Pradesh, to Magadha and Koshala among others and became a disciple of Gautam Buddha. On the suggestion of Gautam Buddha, he returned and went to the country of Avanti and adapted the words of Gautam Buddha and seemingly did the work of propagating the Dhamma. The story of Bhadanta Pun in Pali language, also appears in Tripitaka. With the help of translation, he had taken Buddhism to Sunaprant, today's Western Maharashtra and Gujarat state of India. By molding Buddhism in the language or dialects there, it was propagated among the people. It is said that the people there were very harsh by nature. They were initiated into Dhamma by Bhadant Purna because of his humble nature. The Asalina Sutta of Majjhim Nikaya finds mention of Kamboj or Kamboj country. This country might have been the northeastern part of today's Afghanistan. It is mentioned in Asalina Sutta that the society there was different from the society of North Indian states like Koshala, Magadha etc. There was no system of Varna. There were only two classes in the whole society. One was called Arya, meaning owner, master, and the other was called Dasa, slave. From this incident, it can be inferred that in that period, or in the period before that, there must have been movement of people here and there. They must have been understanding each other's words by reversing each other's dialects, and this is the reason why it would have been convenient for the disciples of Buddha to get acquainted with the society there. 4.3 Relationship of the Buddhist tradition of translation to the Greek tradition. Those who have read ancient history would remember that in the 4th century BC, that is, in the 2nd-3rd centuries after Gautam Buddha, relations between India and Greece had been established. Alexander had set out for world conquest. He had conquered many countries. In this regard, it can be inferred that without the help of translation, his work would not have been possible. In the Indian subcontinent, which includes India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Alexander fought in many places and many areas were under his control. Due to being in his empire, later his chief commander Seleucus also ruled over him. It is said that matrimonial relations took place between members of the families of Seleucus and Chandragupta Maurya. There was a treaty between the two, and Chandragupta Maurya got a vast area merged into his empire. Megasthenes was appointed as the ambassador of Greece in his capital Pataliputra. He wrote down his experiences of that time in his description Indica. It can be inferred from this fact that even at that time the work of translation must have been done in a big way. The information that Megasthenes collected must have been obtained from the main languages of that time, Pali, Sanskrit, Prakrit, and from other regional dialects and languages prevalent at that time. As such, today there is no detailed information that Chandragupta Maurya ruled with the help of translators in such a large empire. But this much can be inferred that from ancient Gandhara to the regions far south such as Karnataka were part of their empire, in which many dialects and languages were spoken. It is said that his prime minister Chanakya, Vishnu Gupta, had composed a book named Arthashastra in Sanskrit, which was related to many subjects like Rajshastra, political science, economics, taxation, public administration etc. But the Arthashastra available today is not of Chandragupta Maurya period. It seems that someone else in the name of Chanakya composed this text in later centuries. Some scholars also believe that Arthashastra was translated into Greek as well, but no such evidence is found today. It is known from Jain sources that Chandragupta Maurya had become a Jain Muni, ascetic, in the last part of his life and started living in the Karnataka region of South India. Thus, one has to resort to conjecture that North Indian Chandragupta Maurya must have been living his life with the help of translators or interpreters in South India. 4.4 Contribution of the Buddhist tradition of translation to the spread of Buddhism. It appears that in the entire ancient history of India, Emperor Ashoka's work must have been the most extensive and specialized in translation work. Emperor Ashoka further expanded the empire of Chandragupta Maurya. Due to his inclination towards Buddhism, there was a lot of development in translation work. During his reign, the third Sangiti of the Buddhists, the great assembly of Buddhist monks, in which the decision on the interpretation of Buddha's words was decided, was held in his capital Pataliputra, in which 1,000 delegates participated. Regarding the discussions and deliberations, that took place in that assembly. The Buddhist sources only say that they took place in the Pali language, but it seems the help of other languages was taken and many translators were employed in this work. Bhadanta Mahadeva, who was a contemporary of Ashoka and did not participate in the Sangiti, but the sources traced through him must have been other than Pali. Their source was probably Sanskrit. In this Sangiti it was also decided to send religious preachers to different countries. It is known from Buddhist literary sources that such preachers were sent to the Greeks, Gandhara, Kashmir and the Himalayan regions in the north, the western parts of India, such as the Upper Antarctica, the southern parts, such as the Vanvasi and Mysore, and countries as far south as Sri Lanka and Suvarnabhumi, Malaya, and Sumatra. This information is further confirmed by the 13th Edict of Ashoka, where it is said that he propagated Dhamma in not only in his empire and in the bordering regions but also in distant countries. This was also done in Syria, kingdoms of Ptolemy of Egypt, Antigonus, Antakini of Macedonia, Alexander of Epirus, an ancient district of northern Greece, and Magas of Sarania in North Africa. He has also described the Greeks, Kambojas, Pandyas, Cholas, Andhras, Pulindas, Singalas etc. in this context. In the second edict of Ashoka, it is mentioned that in all these countries, Ashoka opened hospitals for both humans and animals, dug wells and tanks, planted trees and medicinal plants for the benefit and welfare of all beings. In this regard, it can be inferred that the state employees performing these tasks must have been familiar with the languages and dialects there, or it would have been possible only with the help of translators and interpreters. In this context, it would also be appropriate to describe a Greek monk named Yon Dhammarakshit who was sent to Aparantak for preaching the Dhamma. 4.5 Sri Lanka Buddhist tradition of translation. Emperor Ashoka's son, brother by other sources, Mahendra is believed to have taken the religion of Gautam Buddha to Sri Lanka. The other four monks accompanying him, Ittitya, Uttiya, Sambal and Bhagdasala, were originally from Orissa. According to the scholars, relations between Orissa and Sri Lanka have been there since very ancient times, and these associates of Mahendra would probably have been familiar with the language and dialects of Sri Lanka. It would not be unreasonable to assume that without the help of translators, the relationship between the two countries would not have been possible. They were aware that it is impossible to go to a new place and propagate religion without knowing the language there. They preached Dhamma and established a Sangha in which the local people took admission and studied and taught the Tripitaka, compiled in Pali language. For this work too, those people would have needed translators. It is also important to know here that apart from learning the lessons of Buddhism in their local language, dialect, they also received it in Pali language. Many epics written at that time are testimony to this fact. During the reign of Emperor Ashoka, extensive work of Buddhism took place. In this regard, it is also clear that most of his work must have been related to Theravada Buddhism, because the sources available about Ashoka are mostly Theravada. But to infer from this that Ashoka only promoted Theravada would be wrong. It is known from Sarvastivadi sources that Ashoka was also inclined towards them. It is said that his religious teacher Bhadanta Upagupta was a Sarvastivadi. The matter of Sarvastivada is also important because in later centuries where Theravada Buddhism became prevalent in the countries of Southeast Asia, Sarvastivada prevailed in the northwestern regions of India and Central Asia. This work had already started in the time of Ashoka from both the sides. Much more can be added to this subject that the roots of Sarvastivada were established in the northwestern regions of India, Afghanistan, Pakistan and Central Asia. During the time of Ashoka, which flourished and blossomed completely during the time of Emperor Kanishka. According to the Theravada tradition, the fourth Buddhist council took place in the 1st century during the time of King Vattagamini Abhe, when the Tripitaka was first transcribed in stone. That work was also done in Pali language only. Prior to this, the religious literature brought by Mahendra was preserved through memory and oral tradition. To transcribe them, 500 monk delegates and 500 scribes were employed. Pali thus became the literary language of Sri Lanka, a position it still occupies. It is also known that the texts were composed in Sinhala language, but the importance of Pali language was not reduced, which gives a clear message that the monks there would probably have been proficient in both the languages, which is a very important requirement of the translation process. 4.6 Contribution of the Greek and Kushan kings to the Buddhist tradition of translation. The name of King Menander is important in Indian history, who ruled over a large area of northwestern India. His capital is believed to be at Sagal or Sakal, modern Sialkot. The text Milindaprasna depicts the philosophical dialogues between the Greek King Menander and the Indian Buddhist monk Nagasena. In order to know and understand Indian religion and philosophies, the Greek king came in contact with monk Nagasena and became a Buddhist after being influenced by him. Translations and translators must have been needed for all these things, through whom monk Nagasena must have explained his point to the king, and the king must have imbibed the esoteric subject like philosophy. The Milindaprasna is available in Pali language today, but some scholars opine that it was originally in Sanskrit and the available Milindaprasna is its Pali translation. The influence of Sanskrit language on the style of Milindaprasna cannot be denied. The earliest Chinese translation of Milindaprasna was done between CE 317 to 420. The name of the Chinese translation is Nagasena Sutra, that is, the Chinese translators gave more prominence to the monk Nagasena instead of King Milind. The reign of King Kanishka, who became the chief ruler of the Kushan dynasty, is most important in relation to the history and translation work of Buddhism. His empire was very extensive and included the whole of Central Asia and the area up to the Yamuna Valley. On the basis of historical evidence, scholars opine that Mathura was his second capital. The Sarvastivadi sect of Buddhism dominated during the time of Emperor Kanishka. The Fourth Council of Buddhism, according to Indian historians, was held in his kingdom at Kundalwan in Kashmir Valley or Jalandhar in Punjab in the 1st century, where Buddhist monks from different regions discussed serious philosophical issues. The specialty of this concert is that instead of proceeding in any one language, the support of many languages was used, because during the Sangiti, the Vibhasha, commentary on Arya Gyanprasthan Shastra was written. It must have been either in Samprakrit or in Sanskrit. It is difficult to judge because of the unavailability of the original Chinese translation of Arya Gyanprasthan Shastra written by Arya Katyayaniputra is available. It seems that the entire Buddha text of Sarvastivadins was compiled in this Sangiti, which is available today only in the form of Chinese translation. It is worth noting that the Sanskrit translation of Arya Gyanprasthana Shastra was done about 50-60 years ago by Shantiniketan's famous scholar Shanti Bhikshu Shastra. 4.7 Chinese tradition of translation. Probably in the middle of the 2nd century, Buddhism entered Central Asia and China. The first written evidence of Buddhist texts being translated into China dates to the arrival of the Parthian missionary and Shigao to China in 148, possibly coinciding with the expansion of the Kushans into the Tarim Basin. And Shigao established the first temple at Loyangand and organized the translation of Buddhist texts into Chinese, thus setting off a wave of translation in Central Asia that lasted for several centuries. Most of these early translations were of Hinena texts. First of all, Kushan Lokakshem, AD 164. 186, started the translation of Mahayana Sutras in Chinese language. The process of Chinese translation of Buddhist texts by a Scythian-born Dharmaraksha began after the Partition of China by the Ha dynasty. This process continued during the Western Qin dynasty, AD 216–316, and the Eastern Qin dynasty, AD 317–419. Pafo Tu Teng, AD 310, a Buddhist monk from Kucha, translated or encouraged many Mahayana texts with his two disciples Tao En, AD 312–385, and Hui Yuan, AD 334–416. He not only collected the translated texts but also prepared their first table and invited Kumrajiva from Kucha. Thus, by the arrival of Kucha's great Buddhist translator Kumrajiva, AD 344–413, the above efforts had prepared the ground for translation works. Kumrajiva translated many important texts and revised the earlier Chinese translations. Many of his translations are still in use today. This process was further promoted by Buddha Bhadra, who came to China and preached the Buddhist method of meditation and Vinaya. Kumrajiva's disciples were later dispersed due to political instability, which only helped in the spread of Buddhism to other parts of China. These early Buddhist translators were often referred to as Buddhist Tao. The reason for this was that he used Tao terminology in his translations due to the difficulty of finding proper words to describe Buddhism in Chinese. Translation work in China had acquired the status of a special discipline. The enormous collection of Chinese translations of Buddhist texts is the result of the hard work and dedication of those translators. They carried out the translation work of such esoteric texts for years without any dictionary or terminology. There were regular translation boards established for translation, in which some Indian scholars and some Chinese scholars were there. This translation board used to work under a specific scholar, and in case of any dispute, the decision of that scholar was final. A long list of famous specialist translators is available in relation to China. Some translations have special literary value and are accepted as milestones in Chinese literature. Gradually, the number of Chinese translations of Buddhist texts increased enormously. Buddhists now faced the problem of how to read this vast number of Buddhist texts and how to put their teachings into practice. As a result of this, many sects of Buddhism were born, each of which focused on the study and observance of certain texts. Here it is absolutely necessary to describe the famous Chinese travelers Faxian, Shanzang and Yijing. All these three had received the initial knowledge of Buddhism in China only. Dissatisfied with all the three Buddhist texts available in translated form, they themselves set out on a journey to India with the desire to read the original forms of those texts. Faxian's doubt was about some topics related to Vinay. Similarly, Shan Zhang also came to India to find out the reality by being disturbed by the tendency of different sects to prove their texts to be the original Buddha's words. Yixing also wanted clarification on the controversies related to Vinaya. These three great travelers took hundreds of manuscripts to China which were translated by them and many other scholars. 4.8 Korean and Japanese Buddhist traditions of translation. Early historical evidence indicates that Korea was divided into three kingdoms: Kaguya in the north, Pakche in the southwest, and Silla in the southeast. According to tradition, a Chinese monk first introduced Buddhism to Kaguya in the late 4th century. A Central Asian monk brought Buddhism to Pakche after some time. During the 6th and 7th centuries, many Korean monks went to China to study Buddhism and returned with texts from various schools of Buddhism. Around the end of the 7th century, the three kingdoms were united under the leadership of Silla, and from then on Buddhism flourished under royal patronage. That development left a significant mark on the lives of Koreans. The Chinese translation of the entire Tripitaka was engraved on wooden blocks. Thousands of such blocks were built in the 13th century and are still preserved as a national heritage of Korea. During the 6th century, the king of Pakche sent images of Buddha and copies of Buddhist texts to the Japanese court to establish peaceful relations with Japan. From the very beginning, Japanese rulers have played an important role in the establishment of Buddhism. Prince Shotoku has a special place among them. Tradition says that he wrote the country's first constitution based on the moral and social values of Buddhism. Many monks were sent to China for studies. Along with motivating the monks to study the scriptures, he also gave sermons to the monks. Later he also wrote commentaries on some of these texts. His commentaries are said to be the primary texts written in Japan and are now kept in national museums. After this, during the Nara period, Buddhist texts were copied and distributed across the country. At the same time, Chinese monks started coming here and many Chinese sects of Buddhism entered Japan. Later Japanese Buddhism has been completely influenced by Chinese sects. 4.9 South Asian Buddhist tradition of translation. In the 4th-5th century the translation work took place at a rapid pace. This is the period in which the three Atthakathakas of Pali were actively engaged in this work. Buddhadatta was from South India and was sent by the Sangha to Sri Lanka to translate the Attakathas available in Sinhala language into Pali language. There is evidence that Buddhadatta had started the work of several Attakathas, but failed to complete them. For some reason, when he was finally returning from Sri Lanka to India by ship, he met Buddhaghosa in the ship going towards Sri Lanka. He informed him, Buddhaghosa, about his work and said that he has only a short life left, so he will not be able to complete the work now, so Buddhaghosa should complete that work. Like Buddhadatta, Buddhaghosa also did the task of translating the Sinhalese Attakathas into Pali and thus he prepared many Attakathas. According to some evidence, it is noteworthy that he only translated the Attakathas from Sinhala language into Pali, but according to other sources, he translated some into Pali and wrote some himself. Vinayapitaka's Samantapasadika, Digha Nikaya's Sumangal Vilasni, Majjhima Nikaya's Papancha Sudani are perfect examples of back translation. Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia and Laos also have a very rich Buddhist tradition of translation. The credit for popularizing Buddhism and translation work in these countries goes to Sri Lanka. According to local tradition, Buddhism was spread in the Suvarnabhumi region during the time of Mahatma Buddha by two merchants named Tapas and Bhalika, who met him on the way before the formation of his Sangha. Buddha gave them some of his hair, which they carried and built a stupa over his memorabilia atop the local Singuttar hill. The famous Shwedagon is located there today. According to the Mahavamsa, Buddhism had already reached Suvarnabhumi by Sona and Uttara, the two monks sent by Ashoka. Archaeological evidence proves that Sanskrit Buddhism took root in Sri Kshetra, ancient Prom and today's Myanmar, in the 6th century. Milindaprasna is one of the earliest texts in Thailand. When the creation of Buddhist literature started in Sri Lanka, many of them reached Thailand along with it. For this reason, 52 stories like Samantapasadika of Vinayapitaka, Sumangal Vilasini of Digha and Athasalini of Dhammasangani are prevalent among Thai monks and householders. Apart from these, many Buddhist texts like Nettapkrana, Pitakopadesa, Visuddhimagga etc. are also popular. The Sukhothai period has been the period of arrival of Buddhist literature from abroad in Thailand. King Ramkhamhain did two things simultaneously, ruling the kingdom and teaching Buddhism. King Lithai of Sukhothai invited monks to study the Tripitaka inside the palace. Some passages from a book called Tao Sichulaka show that some monks were versed in 1 to 5 books of the Vinayapitaka, some monks were versed in 40, or 100, or many suttas of the Satapitaka. Some monks were well versed in 10 or more Bhanavaras of the Abhidhamma Pitaka. In Lanna, Buddhist literature from overseas encouraged Buddhist monks in Yinga, May and nearby areas. Among those scholars, Farah Kirimangalayam compose Mangal Tharipani, Vasantararipani and many other texts. Other scholars also compose many Buddhist texts. However, the Pali studies at Sukhothai and Lan were not organized according to course or class of study, examination, etc. Later, in the Ayut period, AD 1350 to 1767, during the reign of King Narayan, the syllabus, teaching work, and examinations were fixed. In those days the medium of examination was oral. Pali study was divided into three categories. 1. Baranthari, for those students who have finished the translation of Satapitaka. 2. Barantho, for students who have finished the translation of Vinayapitaka. 3. Baryang Ek, for students who have finished the translation of Sutta, Vinaya and Abhidhammapitaka. Overall, it can be said for the entire Southeast Asian region, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, that there is a strong and distinct influence of Pali language on languages, dialects, literature, arts and architecture. For the student of translation studies, it can be a very fertile field to learn about the relationship between different genres and languages, how the monks there gained command in both the local and Pali languages, and how the local residents maintained harmony in their life performing everyday tasks using vernacular and the Pali language for religious functions. 4.10 Tibetan Buddhist tradition of translation. The Tibetan translation tradition has been even more rich and systematic. In fact, the alphabet, grammar, script etc. of Tibetan or Bhoti language, in Tibet it is known as Bodskad, is all based on Sanskrit language. In the 7th century, the king of Tibet, Sro-Bache Sagampo, AD 617 to 650, sent his minister Thongmi Sambhota to India to develop a language for Tibet, since the language existed only orally in Tibet. After coming to India, Thongmi Sambhote studied Sanskrit language for many years and developed 4 vowels and 30 consonantal script and grammar of 8 chapters. He returned to Tibet with many Sanskrit Buddhist texts and translated them with the help of Nepali Pandit Kusar. Since then, a solid foundation for translation work was laid in that region. King Khesarod Lare Bichan, AD 742 to 797, has contributed the most to the progress of Tibetan translation work. It was he who built the first Buddhist Mahavihara Bazam Yas, under the direction of Acharya Shantarakshita and Acharya Padmasambhava, who came over from India. He established a center for the study and teaching of religion and philosophy as well as translation. He himself traveled from place to find 108 talented Tibetan youths and got them proficient in translation works. With knowledge of Tibetan language and Sanskrit language, he provided them with royal facilities in Bazam Yas, Sanye, Mahavihara. These polyglot translators were honored with the title of Lochawa. The word Lochawa is an evolved form of the Sanskrit word Lokchakshu. Under the chairmanship of Acharya Shantarakshita and Acharya Padmasambhava, the said Tibetan translators got Buddhist texts in Sanskrit translated into Tibetan language. To each of the great translators engaged in this pious work, the king used to provide livelihood resources equal to the salary of his 33 bodyguards. The next major contributor to the history of Tibetan translation was King Khiralpachan, AD 866,901. In his contribution to translation work, he was in no way inferior to his predecessors. He patronized well-known Buddhist monasteries and monks' association in the country of Tibet and augmented the prevalent Tibetan translation works of the existing religious texts in Sanskrit etc. languages. Acharyas like Surendra Bodhi, Shilendra Bodhi, Dhanashila, etc. were invited from India for the cooperation of the Tibetan Lochawa people in the teaching and translation work of Buddhist philosophy and Sanskrit. Once again, in the second half of the 10th century, through the tireless efforts of King Lhblma Shs Hod and Lokwaran Sen Bizagpo, AD 958-1055, who are Among the foremost great translators in the history of Tibet, translation work was done with the help of well-known Acharya Dipankar Srijnan. Today the entire Buddhist literature is available there, which has been compiled by Tibetan scholars since the 14th century and has been mainly divided into two parts. Kagya means translation of The Sermons of Buddha and Tanjia means translation of scriptures. In Tibetan translations of Buddhist Sanskrit texts, technical terms available in the Tibetan language have been used for Sanskrit terms with great skill. According to eminent Tibetan scholar and historian Buston Rinsen Grupa, AD 1290–1364, the texts of Buddhist religious philosophy were translated from Sanskrit, Chinese, Xinjiang, Kashmiri, Afghani, Sinhalese, Suvarnabhumi, Cambodian, Bengali, Nepali, Javanese texts related into Tibetan language. Here it is necessary to know the two translation methods used in Chinese language and Tibetan language. While the paraphrasing method was adopted in the Chinese language, the metaphrasing method was adopted in the translation of the Tibetan language. This is the reason why it is easy to back-translate Tibetan Buddhist texts into Pali, Sanskrit, etc., whereas it is difficult to back-translate from Chinese. 4.11 European Buddhist tradition of translation. The next stage of the Buddhist tradition of translation begins when the Industrial Revolution knocked in Europe in the 16th century. Along with this, the colonies of European countries started coming into existence. In the same sequence, European scholars took support of the languages, dialects, literature and culture of those colonies to rule their respective colonies. They knew that it was necessary to study the ancient languages before starting the texts of religion and culture. So, the European scholars first paid attention to them, and in this way the British, French, Germans, Russians, Portuguese, Italians among others showed interest in Oriental languages. Among the great scholars who may be mentioned in the translation work, the names of Burnouf, Fosbol, Prinsep, Kern, Somme de Cause, Oldenburg, Poussin, Levy, Stecher-Butsky and Mr. and Mrs. Rhys-Davids should be mentioned in golden letters. The names of Asian scholars such as Sarat Chandra Das, Satish Chandra Vidyabhushan, Banyo Nanjiyo, J. Takakusu, Dharmanand Kaushambi, B. M. Barwa, Rahul Sankrityan, among others is remarkable. William Jones was the first person to study Sanskrit. He did it with great difficulty. In Calcutta, realizing the value of the hidden treasure in Pali literature, George Turner was the first European to edit and translate the Mahavamsa in 1837. In 1855 the Latin translation of Dhammapad came out with the efforts of Vincent Fosbol. In 1844, Eugene Burnouf translated the long sections of Divyavadana, Current View in Vajrasuchi. His second work is the French translation of Saddharma Pundarika in 1852, and the English translation of Sutta Nipta in 1881. His most voluminous work was the edition of Jatak, which he published in 6 volumes between 1877 and 1897. Hermann Oldenburg published an English translation of Patimokkha, Mahavagga and Chulavagga, of the Vinayapitaka as volumes 13, 17 and 20 from the sacred books of the East. Between 1879–1883 in collaboration with Rhys-Davids. The English translation of The Buddha was published in 1882, which was the first textbook printed in Europe based entirely on Pali sources. Among his other works was Tahartheri Gatha, an English translation of Deepavansh published in 1897. The version of Aryashu's Jatakamala composes the Sanskrit equivalent to Pali Jatak, AD 1891, and the translation of Saddharma Pundarik, AD 1884, were brought out by H. Kern. Rhys-Davids published an English translation of Nidana Katha in 1879. He founded the Pali Text Society in 1881 and published the Pali Tripitaka, several Pali Atakathas and about a dozen translations throughout his life. Milinda Prasna, AD 1890, 91, and Digha Nikai, AD 1889, 1910, 1921, still serve as a model for translation of this type of texts. Mrs. Rhys Davids did the English translations of Teri Gatha, AD 1909. Thera Gatha, AD 1913, Sagatavaga of the Sayukt Nikai, AD 1917. Dhammasagani, AD 1823, Abhidhamata Sandhom, AD 1910, and Kathavattu, AD 1915, got them printed. The Pali Text Society gave opportunities to many translators from the West. 4.12 Modern Indian Buddhist tradition of translation. Along with the commendable efforts of Western scholars in the propagation of Buddhist tradition, the awareness of Indian scholars is also noteworthy. In 1892, The Buddhist Text Society was established in Calcutta. Rajendra Lal Mitra and Har Prasad Sastra catalogued the scattered manuscripts in various Nepalese libraries. Sarat Chandra Das publicized the books of Indian scholars available in Tibet. Satish Chandra Vidyabhushan started the work of revival of Pali language by translating Kachayan's Pali grammar into English. Dharmanand Kaushambi translated many Pali texts and made them accessible to the majority of people. Rahul Sankrityan took the work of editing and translation to new heights by bringing ancient texts from Tibet to India. 4.13 Critical interpretation of the modern Buddhist tradition of translation. The modern history of translation of Buddhist texts can be divided into three phases. The first phase can be dated to the early years of the colonial period in the Indian subcontinent, when Christianity and Christian values were integral to the colonial mindset. English translations of Pali, Prakrit and Tibetan Buddhist texts during this period were often done by missionaries, and if not then by scholars who were committed to and influenced by Christianity. These translations, therefore, were colored by a high degree of Christianity, both in the language of the translation and in the interpretation of the original material. Karna's early translation of the Saddharmapundarika Sutra is an example of one of the best or worst translations of this period. In this, the phrase, Egyptian meat pot, taken directly from the Bible, was probably used to indicate the idea of sexual depravity. What is more pernicious in the translation is the emphasis on the use of the word death for nirvana. This is not only a mistranslation, but an unconscious underestimation of the highest goal of Buddhism. Another example of the overwhelming influence of biblical values on an early translator of Buddhist texts is Mrs. Rhys Davids' translation from Pali sources. Despite all evidence to the contrary, he found affirmation of the existence of the soul in the Buddha's teaching. Waddell can also be classified in this group, although he did not translate as much as the original translation. His term, Lamism, is full of Christian bias towards Buddhism. While he was in Tibet, Waddell was considered to be quite favorable towards Buddhism, but in England at the time of writing his book, prevailing Christian attitudes towards non-Christians, especially non-biblical religions, changed his views, and he wrote what that confirmed the prevailing view at that time. In the second phase of translation of Buddhist texts, which largely capped the first half of the last century, the Christian influence was not as dominant. During this period, although the colonial, political and economic domination of many Buddhist countries in Asia continued, the influence of Christianity and Christian values on Western translators faded into the background. Perhaps this development can be partly explained by the decline in the prestige of Christianity among Western intellectuals and the advancement of science and the rise of Marxism. The categories and key concepts of traditional Western philosophy became dominant in this phase, and most translators were heavily influenced by Kant. However, the introduction of Kant's categories and concepts in the translation and interpretation of Buddhist texts did not help in revealing the real content and purpose of these texts. For example, One translator may be named Shaibatskoy, who worked extensively on Buddhist materials during this period and whose translations were strongly influenced by the ideas of Kant. His repeated use of the phrase thing in itself is taken directly from Kant's metaphysics. He has used this phrase to refer to the absolute, or the ultimate reality. However, whether this is a helpful phrase for understanding the Buddhist concepts of ultimate or tattva is questionable. By another Western philosopher, Berkeley, and Kant was also influenced by Berkeley in translations of Yogacara texts such as the Madhyantavibhanga. Berkeley, who was the first of the Western philosophers to propose the existence of mind alone. This connection was not helpful, as Berkeley was a clergyman who wanted to prove that nothing could exist except the mind of God, and therefore accepted God as the supreme architect of the universe. Most contemporary scholars now accept that Buddhist psychological philosophers, especially Asanga and Vasubandhu, have a very different approach from traditional Western idealism. Another example of a Western translator is Conze. He has done a lot of useful work and has respected Kant's ideas in his translations and interpretations of Buddhist texts. Insisting on the use of the word param to translate Paramartha is a direct imposition of Kant's terminology and concepts on Buddhist thought. In line with the point made earlier about the decline of Christian influence on English translations of Buddhist texts of this phase, it may be pointed out that Shaibatskoy, though a Russian, was educated in Germany, and it can be concluded that they were molded to abandon Christian values and replace them with Kant and Marx. Conze also belongs to this period. The third phase of translation of Buddhist texts into English from Sanskrit and Tibetan sources can be characterized by the introduction of more idealistic and ideological schemes of the Western intellectual and philosophical tradition. This phase is roughly considered to be from the middle of the 20th century to the present, as evidenced by the translations of some Western scholars. Kant, Marx and Berkeley were largely omitted during this phase. The new fashion began to look to Western psychology for the conceptual schemes used to translate and interpret Buddhist materials, as taught primarily by Freud and Jung. There was also a new tendency to adopt the concepts of linguistic relativism, especially those propounded by Wittgenstein, to assist in the task of translating Buddhist texts into English. There are many modern translators who have made extensive use of concepts and terms drawn from modern psychology and linguistic relativism in their translations of Buddhist texts. The most obvious examples of this new influence in the translation of Buddhist texts into English are the works of Gunther. But there are many other works that fall into this category. What is common to all three phases is the imposition of Western conceptual schemes on Buddhist material. In other words, whether it was the values of Christianity, or traditional Western philosophy or modern movements in Western intellectual circles, translations of all Buddhist texts were irritated by a particularly prevalent use of the Western scheme of thought. It would not be wrong to say that all the translators who worked in these three periods looked at the Buddhist texts through some Western spectacles of one color or the other. As a result, there may have been some distortions in the original Buddhist message. The problem is not only Western. A similar problem arose when Buddhist texts were translated from Sanskrit to Chinese. Their Taoist, and to a lesser extent, Confucian concepts influenced the translation and interpretation of Buddhist materials, and in some cases seriously distorted the meaning. The problem of reading and translating Buddhist texts through their own specific cultural and intellectual prism is bound to arise, especially when Buddhist texts and techniques come into contact with a civilization that has its own sufficiently developed and defined language. Perhaps the remarkable accuracy of Buddhist texts from Sanskrit into Tibetan has been the fact that Tibet hardly had a sufficiently developed and defined intellectual tradition of its own in the 8th and 9th centuries. It can be said that the introduction of Buddhist concepts and values embedded in Buddhist texts was often due to intellectual deficiency. To put it more positively, Tibetan translators were able to read, translate and interpret Buddhist texts through their own eyes, as they themselves were not yet colored by their own intellectual preconceptions. A tendency emerged among Western translators to voice Buddhist texts in English with an authentic Buddhist voice, in association with scholars belonging to the indigenous tradition. Sometimes such attempts are made for average English readers who are not familiar with the original language, at which point literal English translations become difficult, if not impossible. This is a positive development, however, because a relatively tight interpretation is better than a misunderstanding. Certainly, the confusion arising from trying to understand Christian, Kantian or even Freudian translations of Buddhist texts full of Jungian or Wittgensteinian concepts and terms is mitigated by this new approach. The goal towards which we should all strive is undoubtedly a translation that speaks with a genuine Buddhist voice, presented in a language and style that is comprehensible to the average educated reader. Perhaps this is a goal that can be achieved in the latest phase of translation of Buddhist texts into English, which may be called the fourth phase, and whose beginnings can be seen in some of the latest translations, which are based on a new sense of literary and oral objectivity, made with and with respect for the indigenous Tibetan Buddhist tradition. 4.14 Summary. In the 6th-5th centuries BC, there must have been a huge problem of translation and its linguistic form before the people. The sayings of Gautam Buddha, as collected in the Tripitaka, indicate that monks traveling from place to place resorted to translation in propagating the Buddha's words. Translation has played a very important role in all these efforts. In this unit we have discussed these themes of Buddhist literature. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video with the next chapter.